All right, so live with me right now, I have Chris Farren doing an interview for the station. And Chris, I mean, I already asked you this, but just for the sake of starting off the recording, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I feel good and I feel happy.
That's
And
that's a.
how do you feel?
I feel good and happy as well. I mean, that's a great way to feel going into an interview. I certainly don't think this would go smooth if you were sad.
No, I mean I would probably just pretend like I was happy if I was sad.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you are happy right now.
Yeah. Or maybe I'm pretending.
So what I do is this series called Is This Where You Want to Be, where I talk to whoever I can, really, about where they are in their life, and especially with you, we'll discuss a whole bunch of music. And just kind of, I'm not going to, like I said to the last interview that I did, I'm not going to try and be your therapist, but I want to get your opinion on just life in general, basically.
Okay, yeah.
To start off, we are going to talk about your music. You just recently released an album called Can't Die.
Yes.
And previous to this, you'd been in a couple of bands with one with Jeff Rosenberg. The name escapes me right now.
Rosenstock.
Rosenstock. Oh my gosh, you're right.
First of all, his name is Jeff Rosenstock, and then second of all, the band is called Antarctigo Vespucci.
Antarctica.
I would consider that to be still a part of my life. That is like still a band.
Right, and then you're also still in the your other band, Fake Problems, as well.
That one probably less so, but
okay.
That was definitely a big part of my life for a very long time.
But this is your first full length solo album, which is where my first question comes from. Which is what made you decide to disband from band life and put out a solo album, at least full length?
Mostly because it was just felt like, I had done all this stuff with Fake Problems, and then I kind of transitioned and did stuff with Antarctigo Vespucci, which was kind of like me and Jeff making music together. I was kind of interested in I've been, recording stuff on my own for a while, and I was just interested in continuing to pursue that. And it felt like the easiest way, as I've learned in the past, to kind of like force myself to do something is just to be like, and you're going to release it. Like telling myself, like, you have to put this out. So yeah, I made another record, on my own, and kind of had a lot of ideas I needed to explore. And also, like, Jeff has his own solo thing. And I had already had my own kind of solo thing going on when we started Antarctigo Vespucci. So it's just something that I can kind of, put all my time and effort into without needing to rely on anybody else.
Mm-hmm. And previous to this solo album, you actually did release, I guess, a solo album that was a Christmas album.
Yes.
And I was wondering, what was the inspiration behind deciding to put out your own Christmas album?
That one, I guess more so that one, what I just said, was like I really wanted to get better at recording myself and learning how to use my computer and the programs I have and the equipment I have. And it was, the main part of it was just like, I need to get better at this. And I know the only way I'll get better is if I impose a deadline on myself, and kind of also the fear that everybody, not everybody, but everybody who would want to hear it will hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And also I just kind of, it's kind of been an idea clanging around in my head to make a Christmas album for a long time. But I was just like always putting it off and just like, well, maybe next year. But I kind of had, I was looking at my schedule, whenever that was, 2014, and I was like, I could probably do this finally. And it was a really fun and interesting, in addition to a recording project, it was a really good it was good for me as a songwriter to kind of try to, write a song in kind of a different way, even though I kind of quickly learned that Christmas songs in general are pretty weird and sad, and I already make pretty weird and sad music, so it wasn't that much of a stretch.
We certainly do have. I have a couple of questions going into the weird and sad later on, and it sounds by the way that you're talking that at least when it came to your solo album, you almost adapted this practice makes perfect mentality, which I think is kind of unique coming from you, who you put out plenty of records previously with other people. So did you have that same mentality of, I just need to get this recorded and put it out for people to listen to back when you were in bands, or is this new for you recording solo?
No, I've kind of always had that attitude, that, you know, a record is kind of like a moment in time, and can only perfect something so much, until it starts kind of losing whatever it made it special to begin with. So I'm always interested in kind of like putting a batch of songs together and choosing from them and then making a record and not kind of belaboring it and kind of, I mean, you know, do your best and really work very, very hard, but also know when it's time to let it go and know when it's time to just get it out there. Because I like all the bands and artists I like basically put a record out every year or every other year, you know?
Yeah, that has been the trend lately with a lot of bands, actually.
Yeah.
One thing, and this is a part where I should take a quick aside and I guess comment on what we were just talking about. Whatever method or practice you have been doing to make these albums, it is working, because Can't Die, when I listened to it to review for the station, it was immediately my favorite album of this year. Like, that is coming genuine.
Hell yeah.
I'm being 100% serious when I say that. I absolutely love this album, and you did chart at #1 for us. So
that's so cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I mean, it was a solid album. It was received well. I'm the music director for 88.7 WSYC, so, you know, I was out in charge of putting it out there for DJs, and they took to it very well. It's a great album. And
that's so cool. Thank you so much.
Hey,
that's especially nice to hear for something that, you know, I tended to be, I didn't make it alone, but I was alone a lot while I was making it, especially like mixing it towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I've heard many times before and since then, like, you should never mix your own record because you don't have the right perspective on it. So just like being in my own head for so long, you know, you basically, like, for like 3 weeks, just kind of listening to the same songs over and over and over again. I started to kind of lose touch with if it was, if I liked it or anything. So once it kind of got out there and, you know, people were nice about it, it definitely was like a very unique, feeling that I hadn't experienced before, and because I had kind of worked so hard on it and like very personally done most of it.
And that what you describe about how listening to your own songs and even you yourself starting to question whether or not you like the songs, that's a very common mentality of, you know, everybody's their own worst enemy when it comes to reviewing themselves.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And now speaking more on the actual songs on the album, at least for me, and that's why I'm bringing it up, Can't Die almost feels like a linear story of an album. Like, each song is supposed to take place after the other, and it's almost telling some type of tale. Did you put it together that way, or did you just put it together how it fit?
I did not. I didn't purposefully put it together like that. I kind of wrestled with the order of everything for a long time, and that is actually something that I delegated to somebody else and said, "Hey, I trust you. Will you just choose the order of this record?"
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff Rosenstock, he like totally just kind of did a great job and just kind of, you know, said this song should be first, this song should be second. I mean, I knew that the song Can't Die should have been first, and I knew that the last song would be the last song. But other than that, it was really kind of like, that was something that I had to just be like, I just don't know, and I need to get somebody else to do this.
Mm.
But that's cool. I've never actually heard that it sounds kind of like it's a linear story. I will listen to it with that in mind now.
I mean,
it's definitely,
I'm certainly not going to tell you how to listen to your own album.
No, I like that. That's cool. That's interesting to me. I mean, of course, I wrote all the songs kind of within the same time frame, and I always try to, once I kind of narrowed. So normally when I write a record, I write about 60 songs, and then I narrow it down to like 15, and then through that process, the 15 usually gets narrowed down to like 12 that I record. So, and when I'm kind of choosing which songs I like the best, I kind of tend to try to pick something that all kind of flows together, musically, sure, but also lyrically, like what is this record kind of trying to say, or what are some common themes that come up a lot in these songs. And so, yeah, there's definitely like consistency across like the songs lyrically.
Yeah, it definitely comes through in the album. And moving on just briefly to your live performance of the album, it's a very nice pop rock sounding album, and on tour it has a full band to it, but on tour it's just you and a pedal to make up for the other instrumentation. And did you choose to go just by yourself, or what was the reason for not trying to bring a full band on tour?
There's a few reasons. I think, it's a lot easier logistically for me to just kind of, ride with another band or fly somewhere with just kind of a pedal board and a guitar. I started, once the record came out, I started playing kind of like, since I recorded everything myself, I was able to kind of go in and make like kind of backing tracks for my live set. So I play to like when you see me live, like it sounds like the record, because a lot of it is just literally from the record.
Mm-hmm.
But I replaced all of the, for some reason to me, like I replaced all the real drums with kind of analog and like 808 type beat type drums, and I replaced all the like lead guitars with kind of these synthesizer lines, because for some reason to me it feels more honest and authentic to, if I'm playing alone, to not be playing two real instruments, but just to be playing to like things that are very upfront in their fakeness. There's
Mm-hmm.
definitely a better word, but let's just say fakeness.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know. I kind of just started doing it, and I was wondering how I would like it, and then if I would keep doing it. And then I did it for a tour, and it went really well, and people seemed to really respond positively to it. And then I started to really enjoy just that kind of dynamic, and it felt more interesting to me than having a band. I think ultimately the goal would be to have at least two other people on stage with me. Like oftentimes when I play in California, where I live now, my friend Casey, who played guitar all over the record, he'll play guitar, and I'll play guitar as well, and then we'll play over the beats and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think ideally I would have like a drummer and Casey and I playing, and then also still have like kind of the tracks going and other stuff. It just seems, I don't know, I was in a band for so long, and maybe I'll end up back in that kind of same like classic 4-piece rock setup. But for now, I want to try different things and just to kind of see what they feel like. I was always so adverse to doing stuff like in the electronic realm, because I was always so terrified because of things going wrong. But now that I'm doing it, I feel like kind of invigorated, and it feels like I stumbled onto something that has like unlocked a part of my brain.
And that, speaking of feeling invigorated, I watched a couple of interviews to prep for this one, because I wanted to try and find some questions, or just get a little bit of a vibe for where you're at when it comes to doing interviews and stuff. And you said in response to one of the questions that you wish that you could just never stop touring. You've said that you never get burnt out when you go on tour.
That's basically true. I think there are definitely days where I feel very sad and depressed. You know, regardless of like if the shows are going well or not. And I've been really lucky that I've been playing really, really fun, great shows with a lot of really great bands and having a lot of people who like know the words to the record and stuff like that. But yeah, it's hard to be like away from home. I love my wife very much. We got married a year ago, so I want to spend a lot of time with her as well. But I really do also enjoy being on tour and kind of working as a musician and a performer and an entertainer or whatever.
And that also is really entertaining or interesting because the interview I watched was from 2014, so this was before you got married, and then now being married.
Yeah.
Has that brought a big change to touring life or to your life as a musician, or does it just kind of add to the flow?
I think it just kind of adds to the flow. That's a good way to put it. It's like, it's definitely not something that's made me tour less. I probably have been touring more since we got married because just of the nature of making a record and putting it out and all that. But, you kind of figure out what your limits are, what your balance is, what your partner's needs are, what your needs are, and kind of just figure it out so it works. And I think, if you're lucky enough to have somebody who, wants to make it work with you, anything can work.
That's a beautiful way of putting that.
Yeah.
For now, we're going to dive into some of the lyrics from your album, or the meaning behind some of the songs. And the first one, the one that I think immediately would catch anybody's eye, is the song "Human Being." And just wondering where that song comes from.
It's kind of like it's a way I've always felt about going to big populated party places, like where kind of the goal is less of having a conversation and more the goal is kind of it's just something I don't relate to, so it's hard for me to even describe it. But a party, what anybody would consider a party, is unappealing to me.
I certainly can sympathize with that. My school just finished up its homecoming, and there were these huge block parties that I would make sure to walk just completely around. I didn't even bother trying to go through those at all.
Right. And I would consider myself at the same time to be a fun person. I like to have fun. It's just something that doesn't connect with me, like being kind of crammed into a building or whatever and just kind of not being able to like talk or communicate. I'm sure there have been, exceptions, and I've had fun in certain situations, but generally, I just prefer to, just have a nice kind of small gathering or kind of
keep things on the down low.
Controlled environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of just more my style. And but there's also kind of part of my brain that always seems to want to try it out again, even though I'm constantly like just reaffirming that I don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I always kind of just find myself like dipping into situations, and I think that must be kind of important for everybody to kind of not just write something off and say you don't like something and then just never do it ever again. If it's not like, a scary drug or anything, I think it's important to kind of check in with things that you think you don't like sometimes and just make sure you still don't like them. I don't know if that's true, but that feels important to me for some reason. But basically that song is about me constantly reaffirming that, like, I feel weird in these weird social situations. I feel, like I don't belong. I feel like a weirdo. I feel like, whatever. So, and kind of the battle in the brain of, like, why do you keep doing this to yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to it's a very brief song, and yet it brings out a bunch of emotions, I think, in the little time that it's on, to Insecurity and Beyond. to me, that song almost represents, and again, I'd like your interpretation on it as well, but to me, that song almost sounds like it's coming from the point of view of an energetic pessimist. And it's very interesting how you end the song with "I am the champion of giving up," and that line is what sticks out the most to me. And I'm wondering what you mean by when you say that. You know, where does that come from?
To me, the whole song is kind of about a oblivious narcissist.
So we have energetic pessimist and oblivious narcissist.
Yeah. And which I must be. I must be an oblivious narcissist. I'm pretty sure I am. This is kind of feeling like you are owed something, or like there's so many people who do what I do, and myself included, who, you know, they'll get to a certain point in their career, or they'll be, you know, this level of successful, and they will feel like they want more, which is fine, but also sometimes I'll catch myself like thinking like, am I bummed out because I want more, or am I bummed out because I feel like I deserve more? And then I have to kind of like think about like, why do you feel like you deserve more just because you can, you know, play guitar and write songs? Like there are, you know, 5 bajillion people who can do the same exact thing that I can do. So it's kind of trying to keep myself in check with that. And then also, I think just that line, "the champion of giving up," is kind of, sometimes I will just kind of resign myself to like if I feel like in times of darkness and depression, I'm like, well, maybe I will always just be some sort of, you know, failure in some way. And then I kind of resign myself to just being a failure. You know, it's definitely not something I'm trying to, so there's a truck about to crush me right now, so.
Oh.
I find myself in general a very optimistic person and a very ambitious person and motivated person. But I find also in the darker times, I will kind of just like throw my metaphorical hands up and just be like, well, whatever, who cares?
Right.
Yeah. You know, those feelings don't really last that long, because I'm able to kind of snap out of it and kind of just get back to work. And I reasonably and logically know what the real, you know, reason for making music and doing all this stuff is, but sometimes, you know, everybody gets kind of bummed out about everything.
Yeah, it's the nature of life sometimes, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you for too long. I know that you have a show tonight. Are you good to take a couple more questions?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, I didn't know if you had any set time limit or anything. Speaking of tour right now, you just finished up your leg with Jeff Rosenstock, whom you've had a lot of history with, and you're now touring with AJJ, known as the Andrew Jackson Jihad. Yeah. And how has this tour felt to you so far?
It's been great. When I started touring solo, it was kind of just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know if this is what I will do. And that was about 2 years ago I started touring solo. And now it's gotten to the point where, or like earlier this summer when I was on tour with Laura Stevenson, I started to realize for the first time, like really in a very long time, or ever in some ways, that there were people coming to the shows that I could tell were there to see me, you know? And that's like just such a great feeling. And that has only kind of expanded and continued over the past year, especially with the record coming out. So it's been really, really exciting and really great to kind of meet all these people and spend time with all these bands, a lot of whom are already my friends, and some I'm just getting to know, but I have not had a negative experience yet. So it's fun. It's great.
Good. I mean, as long as you can keep the optimistic feel on tour, I feel like that's a good vibe to have going into these shows for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
on YouTube, you were featured in a Storytellers episode where you come off kind of like a stand-up comedian, to be honest. And we're not going to dive into the exact story that you tell, but I want to focus more on the fact that you really presented yourself well as this almost stand-up comedian. And so this is a question that I've asked other artists when I interview them, and it's, if you weren't a musician, what would you be doing?
Typically my answer to that question is that if I were not a musician, I would likely just be some sort of famous actor. I can only imagine that that would be the outcome. Um,
It's a very bold
uh,
outcome.
yeah, well, whatever. Who cares? I don't know what I would do, but I know, like, I really like that comedy world, but I've had people ask me, like, you should, or say to me, you should do stand up or whatever. And it just seems like something that if you want to be very actually great at, you have to do it and you have to dedicate your life to it. And I just don't want to, because I already have kind of my lifetime of dedication invested in this thing, making music, which I get a lot of gratification from.
For sure. And I mean, I think especially the stand-up comedy and music path would be the same. I mean, you've already advanced so far into music that if you were to try stand-up comedy, that would be a very large step back, I think, as far as, where you are in your career.
Yeah, perhaps. And it's just, for me, it would be also kind of like, I don't know why I think this, but it would be like insulting to the art form to just dabble in it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I know there are several comedians who would probably agree with that.
Yeah. So I know a lot of comedians. I'm very good friends with a lot, and I just, they do it well. They're great, and I do what I do, well enough to be whatever a level of success I'm at, and that's good.
We're coming up on the last couple of questions that I have for you. One very casual one, and then one super deep one. So we're gonna start with the casual one,
Great.
which is just what's a
Love it.
couple of bands that inspire you?
Early on, and kind of the one that I can always kind of go back to and feel some level of inspiration or, whatever. Bright Eyes, Conor Oberst, all that. Just like kind of the artist that made me realize that a person could write songs. I don't know if that's a compliment to him or not, but it just seemed like his early stuff is kind of more like home DIY lo-fi recording, and that kind of inspired me to do that myself. And just such great lyrics and such great production and all that kind of stuff. It just really came into my life at a great time, and I've really stuck with it.
Have you had the chance to check out Conor Oberst's new album that just came out?
Yes, I have. I haven't been able to kind of like sit with it as much as I feel like I need to, because it's definitely a little more work than his previous records, just because it's so sparse and kind of like, I think there's a lot of weight behind the lyrics, and I don't want to just be like a casual, just be it doesn't feel like a casual listen, I guess.
It's an experience. There are several albums like that, which I would label your album as something that, I mean, a person certainly could casually listen to it and enjoy it, but it is much more meant to be, experienced and analyze the lyrics and the meaning behind the songs and the vibe that they give off.
Yeah, cool.
The deep question is, what is your end goal as a musician? I asked this the other day when I interviewed Noah Gersh of Party Baby, and now I'd like to ask you, are you just making music for the love of it? And I mean, of course you're making a career out of it, but is your end goal just to make the best music you can make, or are you trying to be Grammy-nominated Artist of the Year type person?
I want to reach whatever the limit inside of my brain of success or artistic success, personal artistic success I can reach. I don't know what that is. I want to press it as far as it can go. Um, I definitely want to make music forever. I want to, you know, it sucks that David Bowie died, but it's also the coolest thing in the world that he made a record that was like, I'm gonna die, bye. And I will hopefully be able to do that as well.
That Black Star certainly was one of the amazing and yet dark at the same time vibe from David Bowie.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Final question.
But yeah, I mean, okay. Go.
Oh no, go ahead, please expand on it all you want. No problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think I basically said everything, but just like, you know, there are definitely these benchmarks of like success that like the world has for musicians, or like you said, a Grammy.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not above saying that it would. I think it would be so cool to have a Grammy. That would be great.
Yeah.
That just seems like a cool, neat thing to happen. I don't think that means any. That doesn't really mean anything, but it. I don't know. It's just kind of, to me, if that ever happened to me, it would just be like a benchmark of a lot of hard work and kind of, you know, a lot of being able to work with a lot of great people, all that kind of stuff. So I just hope to continue to be able to make music and collaborate with other people and learn more about music and just continue to make music I like, but also to kind of, every time I make a record, I feel like it's not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
It always feels like close, but I just have to let it go, and I won't. It feels like a way. The only way to know how to get to the next, you know, level in terms of my personal like musical abilities is to release the record and kind of just feel what it feels like for it to be out there, and maybe for other people to hear it. And I don't know what I'm trying to say exactly. There's this very specific feeling I get when I play somebody a song that I have never played for anybody, and within the first like minute of playing it for them, regardless of whatever their reaction is, I know more about the song than I did before. Like if I feel a little embarrassed about a part, I'll know, you know, oh, something needs to change there. Or if I feel like especially proud of something, you know, I'll know to expand on it, or you know, I just learned so much from getting the stuff out there into the world.
Yeah, I think,
don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think that's a really interesting take, that because as we touched on earlier, there's what you think about your music, and then there's what other people, and like maybe you don't so much care about what the other people think, but you care about how you feel when you're playing it for other people.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
All right, now moving on to the final question. Is
Okay.
there anything musically or in life, it doesn't have to be just, you know, limited to music, but is there anything in music or in life that you haven't done that you want the chance to do?
Musically or in life that I haven't done. I would like to. I've done this kind of to some different degrees, but I would really like to have like the kind of cliche, like cabin in the woods writing experience. I've never really been able to like totally seclude myself for like a month or whatever and write something, just because logistically I haven't had the time, or you know, whatever. I didn't know what cabin to go to. So that would be cool. And maybe to record like that as well, to kind of have like a very immersive musical situation like that, where everything kind of, nothing else in the world matters within those 2 months other than making this record. I would like that. I would also like to not be alone for that entire time. Maybe like for the first half I can be alone, but maybe like the second half have like, you know, 3 or 4 really great friend musicians who are working on it with me.
That's certain. I mean, knowing how this album turned out, I think that process, at least I would be a huge fan of that for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Heck yeah.
so thank you very much for taking the time to
Of course.
do an interview and all that stuff. This again, for me, this really meant a lot because I immediately loved this album the second I started listening to it, and it's all around great. You'll be in my neck of the woods actually relatively soon because you're coming up through Philadelphia and Pittsburgh just in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
So,
Were you able to come to any of the shows or anything?
if I had money, I certainly. It's not even money for tickets; it's money for gas to get to the shows. In Shippensburg, I'm kind of dead in the middle of Pennsylvania, and it's a 4-hour drive both ways to Philadelphia and Pittsburgh.
Oh, yikes.
So,
Yeah.
unfortunately for
Well,
me,
if anything crazy happens, you can definitely get on the guest list. Just hit me up.
I will certainly do my best. And all right, well, thank you, man. It's been a total honor, and I appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, you have a good day.